Sorry, we disappeared. But we're back. Sorry about that.
You can keep talking. I'll figure this out on my end. I just can't see your questions quite yet, or if you're coming on here.
I'm so sorry. I sort of knew that would happen, and I didn't take the precaution I should have taken to prevent it. But here we are. We're back again, and we even recovered quickly compared to last time.
Yes, we did.
We did better?
We did.
Okay.
I would say so.
Sorry about that. Okay, where was I? I was rambling off. Okay. Yeah, so we talked about worldview, and we talked about the fact that assessment that will influence curriculum, consider your beliefs concerning creation, and how important is it to you that the curriculum that you teach your children includes that worldview of creationism or theistic evolution, or there's many views around this. Or maybe one of your assessments is that it will be a curriculum that will glorify God and draw your child closer to Him. Okay, so that's the first one, is a worldview. The second context that we want to consider is motivation. So what motivated you to consider this particular method of education that your family is choosing? It can be homeschooling, but I want to be also very conscious of the fact that we do have a lot of people who join us who might not be homeschooling full-time. Maybe you have your child sent off to an online class, or you have them doing a few classes with a live teacher, with actually in person. I think that is happening again.
Yes, definitely that's happening. And I mean, we had a child that went to high school for 1 year, part of the time. Everybody's got a combination of different things.
So there's a lot of things going on. So the question you have to ask yourself and your spouse and your family is, why do we want to do this?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of this? I want to caution you that you don't say COVID, because that's been a huge reason for why people have decided to homeschool. But I'm going to suggest that wasn't necessarily your motivation. That might have been the last thing that pushed you over, and you went, oh, I actually can do this. Mm-hmm. But if COVID was one of the things that finally pushed you over, maybe dig a little bit before that and find out, are there things that I was thinking about? Did I want to do this?
Yeah.
Just consider what was your motive, and then ask the question, why was COVID the final straw? Mm-hmm. Not because I don't believe that's actually one of the main reasons why anybody chose to homeschool.
Well, and my husband, who works in the school system, just met with a family, I think it was this past week, that they ended up homeschooling because of COVID, and then just had this epiphany, hey, why don't we just keep doing this?
Right.
And so that might be an option too.
Right.
But I mean, COVID, our kids are, children are in school now, but it's not something that could really sustain you in homeschooling.
No.
There would have to be other things that sustain you, other beliefs and principles that you have, or
I believe it has to be a little bit deeper than COVID.
I agree.
So when you, while you're doing that, make sure you keep in mind that as you assess your motivation and you look at your video is still very glitchy, or I'm seeing it say video is still very glitchy. Okay, I changed my internet connection, so hopefully we should see that clearing up pretty quickly.
See, I'm not actually even getting everybody's comments.
Okay, if it keeps being glitchy, if you could just make sure you comment on that again, because I do have another option. We have one more option here to pull.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Okay, so the thing to remember is what as you think about your motivation, don't consider yourself as the primary educator in the sense that you have to teach them everything. That's not a wise idea. You're their education manager, if you will. So you're going to be assessing the options and then choosing for your child, or with your child, ideally within your family context. You're going to be assessing your options and then helping your child to achieve those options. So you're managing their education. So assess that motivation, take some time, and then again, make sure you write down, if you're writing this in a notebook, in your maybe your commonplace notebook, after you've written down what is our motivation, you'll take some time to discuss that, and then make sure you put in there again, assessment that will influence curriculum. So some questions that you can ask yourself is, why are we doing this? What is a priority in our motivation that we need to keep front and center? Because I think over the years, and your motivation might change over the years, but I think it's important that if your motivation changes, you're always able to go back to your original decision and go, oh yeah, that's why we did it. Is that still true? And I think a lot of times it will still be true, but time has a way of fading.
Yeah. Well, and when
things.
you're feeling worn out and tired and wondering if you can still carry on,
Yeah.
revisiting some of those reasons why you decided to do this in the first place,
Yeah.
it might be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So the next thing I think that we should consider is what I have said, the header I have for this one is place where you live.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there is a really clever heading for this.
I know.
I couldn't come up with it.
No.
But the place where you live is very important context. So maybe you live on a farm. If you live on a farm and you're in an agricultural setting where your family kind of works and one of the parents is working full-time as the primary income provider on the farm, it may be that the children will be very interested in that the biology will actually be quite a big deal for them. So work with that, go along with that environment. Maybe you live in an urban center and right down the street is these fantastic museums, or over here is some science center, over there is like, I know SFU actually here in the Lower Mainland, Simon Fraser University has a giant telescope, and they allow homeschoolers to come in and use their giant telescope. So that's an incredible resource for where we live. But that won't be accessible to people who live in more rural areas. So assess where you live and assess the advantages and the disadvantages that might provide for your family, and apply that not just to your community, the block, the street that you live on. Apply it to the city that you live in, and then bring it out broader to the province. What province do you live in? It's very different to homeschool from province to province. So what does it mean for your family in the province you're in? And then of course our country, Canada. What does it mean to be a Canadian? How does that affect how we're going to educate our kids? And I think one of the biggest considerations here in this under this heading will be the fact that in Canada there are laws that govern education from province to province. And so there might be laws in place that you cannot avoid, and you don't agree with them, but you can't avoid them. This is something that you need to write out, talk about why you don't agree with them, but then work out, but then that will, so this one all by itself will deeply influence the curriculum that you will end up choosing. Because you may decide that, well, we have to do this one, but we're going to also do this one to counter those ideas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, countering the ideas you don't agree with. Yes.
Sometimes that's how you have to do it.
Sometimes it is how you
like we
do
said,
it.
we're not in the perfect utopia. So
Yeah.
so the idea, so in our assessment of our context, it's not always going to be beautiful.
Right.
Our assessment might say, hey, we got this really difficult thing over here, and we're going to be struggling with this for a long time. Well, that's an important part of your assessment, and that's going to influence your curriculum, but let it be there on your assessment. It's part of what we're doing here. We're not trying to say life is all rainbows and roses. That's not going to help in the end.
We've been using the word shrewd in our home.
Shrewd.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
You know, and you don't want to be dishonest,
Yeah.
but you have to be a bit clever.
There is a Bible verse.
Yeah, there might be.
I think Jesus says we have to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important when it
Yeah.
comes to assessing the laws
Yeah.
of the land
Yeah.
and deciding how we can teach our children whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's a really important assessment. So once we've decided, we've put that header in there, the place where we live, and we write down your brainstorming, make sure you put in, again under that, write down assessment that will influence curriculum. And then you can put in things like, are there local attractions?
Yeah.
Are we part of a community that will exchange teaching for childcare or just exchange teaching. There's a lot of co-ops that are around. So are you part of a co-op? And what kind of curriculum does that co-op want to teach? What is the emphasis of their training? So hugely important. And then another one too is, do you have friends who homeschool and are willing to support you in their curriculum choices? Because sometimes, now not all the time, but you have to be very careful with this, because sometimes what works for your friend will not work for you. But sometimes, especially as you're starting out, it may be that your friend suggests something that really works for her family, and she's saying, I'll help you to and support you, so that when you're struggling, I can teach, I can help you to teach your children. That is a very good option to start with. So that's a good assessment, and I think one of the very important parts of our context that we're choosing within where we're choosing curriculum. So another one is family culture.
Yes, and this one we both really hit on together.
We really
that
did.
That place where you live is all Hester. I didn't even cross my mind. But I think it's really important because you do want to take advantage of the place where God has put you. And if that's around a bunch of museums and, you know, things like that, then you should do that. And if you are on a farm, then you should really take advantage of that. But this was an area where family culture, we both, I think, came up with almost identical.
So I think you should speak on it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Except that you didn't tell me that beforehand. Okay, so family. I just wrote down some notes. So family culture. So not all families are the same. We all know that. Some families have one child, some have 4, some have 7. Some families have husbands that work out of town a lot and are not there as the same support as a dad that maybe is home every single day at 4 o'clock. Finances are different. The health of the mom is going to be a factor in curriculum that you choose. How your children learn. Do you have children who have conditions that need extra attention? Everybody's just so different. What I can tell you from my own experience is that the Lord is going to meet you where you're at in your circumstances. You don't have to have the perfect setup to be able to homeschool, but whatever your setup is going to influence what curriculum you choose. So, what else do I want to say about that? Oh, so I have a caution, I guess. I really feel like this family assessment part is really important because you've already kind of mentioned it, but you're going to have conversations with other moms who love this curriculum or that curriculum. And you have to be able to walk away from a curriculum that is the award-winning best curriculum out there. You have to be willing to walk away because when you've gone through your assessment, you realize it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And I actually have an example of that, and it would be all about spelling. And it is a fantastic program, and we've done it. But we've actually had to set it aside, and I'm hoping temporarily, and I've got some kind of ideas of how to reintroduce it, but it is a great program, but I could not find the time to do it for everybody, and I was killing myself trying to get through every single child. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've only ever homeschooled 5, like at one time. Somebody's already, been too young or aged out, and
only 5.
Well,
You've
you know what
only
I'm
ever
saying.
homeschooled 5.
And you know what? I just couldn't do it. There was not enough time.
Yeah.
And what was happening is spelling wasn't getting done because it even though it's a great program and I would highly recommend it, it is time intensive for the mom.
Mm-hmm.
There's not maybe a lot of prep work, but you actually have to sit there with them. And you know, for a couple of years now, we've had to do workbooks, and I do not think it's the ideal, but it's better than nothing. Is sort of how I had to.
You had to make it work for you.
I just had to make it work, and so I want you to really take this to heart, that you have to really look at your family, your energy level, your health, your finances, how much your husband can contribute, the ages of the kids, how many
much time do you have in a day?
How many time? Like once you start with the number 24 at the top of the page,
yes.
and you subtract 8 hours of sleeping, and you subtract.
And by the way, do sleep.
Yeah.
Remember to sleep. That's important.
Yeah.
Don't burn at both ends of the candle.
Yeah, and you subtract mealtime, the prep, the eating, the cleaning up, and you subtract. Oh, I don't know. What else do we do? Showering and getting ready for the day, and you subtract all that. Like, I think you'll be surprised at how little time you really do have, and so you have to be wise and be willing to set aside some of those really good options that just aren't going to work.
Yeah. So an assessment here is that family culture. What kind of money do you have? What kind of time? And I would suggest that this one category by itself is important to give you the confidence as a mom to be a part of a group of other homeschooling moms, and to feel like you do not to not feel like you have to conform to any of their choices.
Mm-hmm.
I think homeschooling moms typically are quite gracious in that regard, where they're like, well, you have to choose that and I have to choose this. But we also need to have the confidence, every one of us, to say, I'm different from you, and that's okay, and this is why. So this is a confidence builder assessment.
Yeah.
So another assessment is academic or natural learner. Some people just have the knack for academic study. Like those smart people, they can sit down and they can read for hours and they get straight 100% on their texts and tests. There are people like that, and if you have a child like that, God bless you. But then there's other children who, they're smart, but they're not necessarily disciplined. You got to push them along every step of the way. And then there's other children who really don't fight with them, don't try to get them to do a textbook, but take them outside and they will be rattling off everything they see and watching nature and telling you about it and observing and categorizing. So you have to assess your learner.
Can I say something on the academic
Absolutely.
side? Academics is only one kind of smarts.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
so
important, very important.
You can have academic children who read and write, and they just, they're academic. They're kind of gifted in that area. It's not really a struggle. But then you're going to have children, at least in our house, we have those real academics, and then we have ones that are smart in other ways. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if my daughters will kill me for saying this, but one of my daughters was accused, in a totally fun, loving way, of being a smart, dumb person because she was academic.
I'll stand next to her.
But she struggled in other, maybe more practical ways. Anyway, it was in a very fun, loving, way, but it was kind of true. She never ever took a formal English class other than the books we had her do, and she did her grade 12 English exam and got 97% on it. Mm-hmm. So some people are just, that is their gifting. Mm-hmm. And then others have other giftings, and you need to figure that out.
You really need to.
You really
for
do.
Each child.
For each one.
Don't assume that we have an academic family, or we're just natural learners. And that may be true, but have you done an assessment on each one of your children? It may be that you need to use different curriculum for different children. I have this with some of mine. I can't put them in the same books. They're too competitive and they have completely different learning styles, and it would be a terrible thing for one of them if she felt like she had to compete with the other. So that's a huge assessment. Do your children need more academic support, or are they children who need to maybe go out more and exploring nature? Ask those questions. So the last one, here's the last one, and then we're actually going to talk about books and curriculum, is educational methods. This one is a bit of a thing because there are so many methods. You know, are you this one or that one, or name your method, and then each method people gather around the name of the method and they make sure they're very particular to stick to the method. I think that can be more harmful than good. And the reason why I say that is because if we use the method as our primary assessment, we can run roughshod over all of these other things we just talked about. It can compromise family finances, it can compromise your child as a learner, it can compromise your beliefs, any one of these.
I think that's brilliant, Hester. I really do.
I don't know.
I do. I think...
Well, we have to be careful with methods, and I say this as someone who is speaking from a classical perspective. And I've seen it so many times where I actually think that the word eclectic would be the best for every single homeschooling family to adopt, because we need to take a little bit from here and take a little bit from there. That doesn't mean we can't sort of subscribe to a method. I really subscribe to both a classical and a Charlotte Mason approach. I think it's really important. But within that, it's so broad, and I'm not going to sacrifice my child's learning style because I need to have a method. I'm just not going to do that. So let's ensure that we don't have any sort of pride in our method. Let that go. Ensure that you can...
it can be a tool to help you, again, like narrow things down and help you to kind of go, oh, you know what, I don't really love that group of things. I really want to avoid, I don't know, traditional textbooks and answer question things. Like, you can kind of go, I kind of want to avoid that. So it saves me some time not looking through it. This is sort of what I gravitate to. But I think it's really important not to throw out all these other things that we've talked about because you want to stick to a certain method.
It's not healthy. The one thing I will say though is so that's not to throw out methods. Just don't hear me well. I do think methods are important, and I am a method person myself. With flexibility. But one thing you should be doing is see if you can create a long-term roadmap for your child's education. So if you are going to go with a certain method, select, I'm going to use history for example because this is the easiest one. Try to have a vision for the chronology of what you're going to be teaching over the years of their education. So you don't want to be teaching medieval time at grade 2 because your child is so interested in princesses and knights. But then when they turn to grade 3, then suddenly they want to be astronauts, and so what do you got to teach now, like modern history? You know, so like try to not jump around based on the interest of your child. You still do need to create a plan and have a purpose to this. So perhaps I like to start like really formal topics a little bit later at about grade 3. So if we're going to start formal grammar at grade 3, that's where we start parts of speech, and I want to make sure I at least have a plan of, if we're going to use one curriculum, seeing it through all the way through to grade 6 or 7, so they have a full-on grammar program. The problem is if you just say, it's grade 3, let's start grammar, and you do parts of speech, and then next year you're awed by this glossy new curriculum, you could find your child still doing parts of speech in grade 5 because you're just continually being awed.
Starting all over again.
With a new program.
I can see that happening,
So have some kind of long-term plan. That doesn't mean you're going to stick with it, right? If you've chosen what your child will read aloud for your ancient, and then for your Greece and Rome, and then medieval history, if you've chosen that, by the time that's the 3-year plan there. So by the time you get to that 3rd year of medieval history, you could look at what you chose way back when, and you can go, oh, this isn't realistic now. but at least you know what your plan was, and you won't deviate too far from it, or just be hodgepodging all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very delicate balance of do not become enslaved to a method, but at the same time, do have a vision for your children's education and what that would look like going all the way through. Holding that lightly so you can kind of see where you're going.
And I would say too, it's okay to come up with a vision that's yours.
Yes.
You don't have to prescribe to some other person or method or some book you read. You know,
Yeah.
I know I fell into that trap reading a book early on about how you should teach history, and I was failing at whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to mention the book, but the prescription that was in the book of the best way to teach history, I wasn't living up to it. It was not working. Now, the irony of that is I have children who love history. I don't know, I kind of look at families, sometimes they're very science oriented, and sometimes they're very like history, they're more the arts. Like, I have kids that love history, but I could tell, man, I am failing at this prescribed way of doing history, and I just so don't want that for anybody.
And maybe that's where your assessment of my kids are more natural learners came out, where you had to sort of pull back from this really prescriptive curriculum and just let them kind of pursue that natural interest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to move on to books and curriculum so that we have time for questions, because I love the question time.
We could just keep going.
We could keep going. So now we're going to talk about actual curriculum choices, and I'm going to disappoint you deeply because I'm still not going to give you a list.
Yeah.
And I'm still not going to tell you what the perfect curriculum will be for your family. Okay? What I will tell you though are a few things that I think are non-negotiable for any homeschool in whichever capacity it works to teach. One of them is just books. Like, just read books. History books, picture books, have encyclopedias around. Poetry is so important. Just have books around. And then if you need to be convinced, then get this one here. It's called The Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mckenzie, and she talks about how to engage with your child on a book that they're reading that you haven't yet read, which is kind of a problem with sometimes when you teach your child to love to read and then they're reading faster than you can ever read. So what questions can you ask so that you are having a good discussion and helping them to draw out the important part of the book without you having read it. The other one I think that you should read is called On Reading Well, and it's Finding the Good Life Through Great Books. And in here, she takes some of the classics and she shows how you can pull a virtue out of those classics, and how that book is sort of illustrating a life either like with or without that virtue. And so I think this is really important as well when we just read good books with our children and use them to help training character. Another thing I think that should be essential is art appreciation. That has nothing to do with talent or breaking out the supplies. You're not going to be dealing with messes. You don't have to have glitter, none of that. It's just pick up.
Does anybody really like glitter?
I would like to know. I would like to know.
Anyway.
I think just choose an artist and go online and print some of the prints or get some of our picture portfolios, read up a little bit about that artist, and put those pictures on the wall and allow that art to speak to you. Perspective from an artist's perspective is it can blow your mind sometimes, the way they paint something and they see it through their art in a way that we've never seen. And children in particular, because they don't have some of the preconceived notions that we already have, because we've got years of theology and philosophy and history and just preconceived notions under our belts. We've been told what to think, how to believe, and we do. Children don't have that. And so they can see a piece of art and they can go, hey, did you see that? What does that mean? And as adults, we're like, oh, I thought that meant this, but I don't really know. So just do plain old simple classical art, put it on your walls, see what happens. It doesn't have to cost much. Music appreciation.
Oh dear, somebody loves glitter.
Uh-oh.
But that's okay.
We're still friends. Yeah. We'll let you in. Another thing is music appreciation, and this can be as simple and as cheap as a Spotify subscription. You can get so much on Spotify. And then find a classical musician or composer. Understand, maybe if you get a book like Story of the Orchestra or Meet the Orchestra, these two books kind of tell you more about what the instruments are, and the Story of the Orchestra will tell you about the classical periods, or sorry, the periods of music, because not all music is classical music. Yeah. There's Baroque, there's classical, there's romantic, so there's different eras, right? So maybe try to understand a little bit about that. But then pick something like George Frederick Handel's Chandos Anthems. Put it, it's really long, it's about 4 hours. Put it on, drink, have tea and cookies ready for your kids, and just listen. Mm-hmm. And then you'll be doing Sing the Bible old style. Because the Chandos Anthems are just scripture texts being sung. Mm. It's absolutely beautiful. I grew up listening to that one, and even when I hear people reading the Bible, sometimes I'll hear passages being read that were sung in this piece of music, and I'll hear them singing in my head, and I'll keep singing the passage long after the reading is done. So music appreciation is important, and it doesn't need to cost anything. And then finally, the nature walks and sketching. And we talked a little bit about that in our last month's conversation when we talked about science, elementary science. But this does not have to be expensive. Just going for a nature walk and teaching your child to observe can start to show them how to observe, classify, define. Sketching is really important. So that's kind of where I want to leave you. Is those are some of the very simple ways to get started on the curriculum choices. And I think with that, let's see if there's any questions.
Okay. We have now 2 votes for glitter.
Okay. We might have to.
I know. Maybe I have to rethink my stance on glitter.
No, I'm not going to. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I will be friends with people who love
clean
glitter.
It up for like weeks, it feels like. Yeah. Okay, I don't see. I think we must have answered. We have quite a few people on here, but I think we must have answered everybody's questions.
What? No questions? It's my favorite part.
Lots of encouraging words. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's very good to hear that this is helpful, because these are conversations I have like one-on-one with a lot of people, and I just think that it's important that we can encourage you in this way.
Yeah. So this isn't really a question, but I am gonna reiterate that you can't do all the things perfectly all the time. You can't go and pick the most intense English curriculum, math curriculum, science, art, history. What am I missing? History. You can't pick like the best of the best, most intense, curriculum for all those subjects and teach them to all your children every year.
No.
You have to take these things that Hester has been talking about and take the time on the front end and work through what you think is really going to work for your family. And I don't know, sometimes you really need to pay attention to science. You can tell you have a child that is just loving science and you want to fill that. Well, pick something then that is going to really fill them up. But maybe you're just going to then read some stories about history for that year. Maybe it's just going to be some picture books or a couple of historical fiction novels, or I don't know, maybe you're going to watch some videos. Or
historical fiction, man, it's valuable.
It is.
It is like medicine with sugar in it. It goes down. Let it go down.
But you just can't do those super intense curriculums for everybody all the time. And things change. you know, we have a mom on here who has some health conditions, and I mean, I've struggled with that too, and it is okay. It is okay to have, to take on some things that are just easier for you to get through for that time period or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, do we have any questions now? So how about high school language arts? I'm wondering what that, maybe if you could give me a few more details. Like, are you wanting to know what specific options for language arts? I'm not too sure what that means. Tell me more about sketching in nature. Does it need to be formally taught to them, or them just using their creativity?
I think we could actually point you to our last curriculum conversation. It's on YouTube, is that right?
The last one isn't up yet.
Okay, so it's going to be up on YouTube soon,
It's
but
on my task list.
you can find it here on Facebook in our archives in the videos. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is because we went into that subject in quite some depth.
Yeah.
We had a lot of questions on that, so
Yeah.
I think rather than going over that again, the short answer is yes.
Start small.
Start
I would
small.
say start small.
Just go for walks.
Yeah.
Don't push it too hard, and just start sketching. You can get a few books that teach nature journaling and sketching, and it maybe start off with a few books like that. A lot of times, if you have that support, you have a better start. But don't overthink it. At very best, go outside with a dollar store sketchbook and crayons, and just see what you start with.
We carry some drawing books.
Yeah.
That have, I think, is there a forest animals one? Am I remembering?
Yeah. How to draw forest animals.
Those kinds of things are helpful, because it is a little bit more fun to know how to draw a deer if you happen to see one. Or so maybe start there. Yeah. But I would say definitely start simple.
Start simple. So go again, if you can, go look back in our archives here on Facebook and find the curriculum conversation from last month, and we talked in there about elementary science, and we did address quite more in depth about sketching.
Okay, so she's wanting more information about high school language arts. Now, we did do a grammar talk. That's our very first one. So if you're specifically wanting more information on grammar curriculum, you could go on YouTube. That one is there.
Right. That's our talk on grammar and language arts. I think that would be a very good one to listen to, especially as you're going into high school language arts, because we do talk about when we start language arts, what is our goal in teaching language overall, and then we did talk about a few specific curriculums.
So what about if you have trouble, and I've struggled with this too, and I often end up handing things off to my husband because he's trained as an English teacher, but what do you do if you're having trouble what could you just tell us two curriculum that would help somebody who struggles evaluating their kids' work? I'm assuming they're writing, and I don't know. For me, I have found IEW really helpful with that, because I struggle with evaluating their writing. And is there anything else that you would say? Okay, if you struggle to evaluate your child's work, do you have two that you could just off the top of your head go check these out?
Yeah, I would say IEW. IEW has some very, very clear assignments and very clear boundaries on how that should happen. Another thing I like about IEW is that it comes with a teacher, which can be so helpful. And again, this is something that you would assess, is like, do I need somebody to actually teach this curriculum? Would that help? Or not? Can I do it on my own? So IEW is very good for that in many ways. And the other curriculum I would suggest is called Writing and Rhetoric. Okay. And it's very thorough, and it's very it helps the child to narrate, it slowly has the child take a piece of writing and change it into their own words. It does it quite slowly. The teacher's manual is really helpful because it actually mirrors the student text with all the answers in it. So you're able to see quite quickly if your student is right on track or if their answers are just kind of somewhere out there that isn't even close to what you wanted to do.
I feel like that question has given us another assessment tool.
Yes.
So actually that question was really helpful because as you're looking at curriculum, you want to know yourself.
Yeah.
If you're really strong in math, then, maybe you don't need those ones that just take it so step by step by step. If you are, like you, gifted in grammar, and just know everything already, then you're maybe not going to need that highly scripted, and so somebody that's struggling with evaluation of writing, then you're going to have to ask yourself, okay, what are my giftings? What am I already good at? If you're an artist, you don't need an art program.
And that's the thing about IEWs. It's very, very structured. It's very good in detail. But I know, and as you're saying this, it's kind of interesting because I know people who will say to me, couldn't stand IEW, it was too intense, there was too many moving parts, it was just too much. Because they're not the kind of parent who needs step-by-step writing instruction. I can totally see that. Right? They can actually just go with a much simpler sort of do this, and they're happy. So again, what kind of skills and knowledge do you as a parent teacher have? I think we're coming up on an hour here.
Oh, is that already?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And I think we could probably, like we said earlier, we could go on all day.
Yeah.
But I think we should probably wind it up.
Okay.
I really appreciate everyone showing up. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions, but if you could just continue, you can leave them. The video will be reposted a few minutes after we're finished. And if you want to continue to write comments and questions on there, please go ahead.
Yes, and we will answer them.
Adrienne will make sure every one of them gets answered. But we can't keep going all afternoon, although I would like to. And there's just, you were going to say something about...
So we have been brainstorming about coming up with a printable that we can gift you guys with. It's not something we're going to charge for, but it will be a template or like a worksheet that you can print off from the website and work through. We'll have the main headings and a few key points, maybe prompting questions for you to think about, and you can work through it. I guess just to work through it so you have a more clear idea of the curriculum that you're looking for. But you are going to have to be subscribed to our weekly email that goes out on Thursdays. I might send out the printable as a special email, not necessarily on a Thursday, but either way, we are going to need your email address if you think you would like that. And so you can go onto our website. I think you have to just maybe scroll down just a tiny bit. I can't remember.
It's right near the top of the main page.
Is it at the top?
It's not at, it's near the top.
Okay, near the top. Anyway, it is
it.
clear. You'll be able to find it and just throw your email in there so that you don't miss the printable, the free printable.
Yeah. And I think it could be a way too of just kind of going over these questions for yourself, with your family, and then something to save and pull out next year and go, oh yeah, I did that. Yeah. And then just kind of go over it and see where you're at in a year. Okay.
That's great.
Now, we're going to be doing this again in 2 weeks, but we'll be doing it in person at our location in Abbotsford on Kilgard Road. If you are local, or if you know someone who's local who would like to join us, please come. It will be Thursday evening, June 30th, and we will begin our talk at about 7 o'clock. I think this would be particularly helpful maybe for new homeschoolers. So if you know anyone who's new, who wants to meet other new homeschoolers or experienced homeschoolers, send them over. We'd love to see them. We will have coffee and tea and water and yummy treats, and we will have a lot of fun. We will also be open for shopping, and it's our late night shopping event, so you can come and you can maybe skip out on the talk and just spend time just looking at what we have for curriculum, because it's kind of a lot. All right, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for joining
thanks
us.
for joining us again.
And we'll see you next month at our next curriculum conversation.
Okay, bye.